Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today, I'm speaking with Brigette Panetta. She is a thought leader, a speaker, and an educator who transforms adversity into empowerment. Having endured one of the most challenging experiences imaginable, she has emerged as a force for resilience and holistic healing. She aims to help others break free from limiting beliefs, reconnect with their inner strength, and step into a life of abundance and purpose. Whether through speaking engagements or transformational retreats, Brigette inspires those who have faced life altering struggles to heal, rise, and thrive. Brigette shares her raw and powerful story, the mindset shifts that allowed her to reclaim her life, and the tools that you can use to cultivate unshakable resilience in the face of adversity. Brigitte's story involves a still ongoing lawsuit that triggered a severe amount of stress, which affected her body and her mind on multiple levels. We get into all the details of her story right away in our conversation, so I'll hold back on sharing them here in the intro. But this situation took her on a strong journey of figuring out what she had to do to hold herself together and create an inner strength that would allow her to stay strong, stay healthy, and stay whole despite all of the chaos going on around her and the additional life situations that were going on throughout this lawsuit. We get into shadow work. We talk about shadow work and the thoughts and patterns that need to be uncovered when you are stuck in a really strong fight or flight and fear response to everything that's happening around you. We talk about movement. We talk about holistic health, Ayurvedic practitioners. We talk about the art of surrender and the art of trust, and how all of these things are extremely powerful in a healing journey and helped her actually heal from an autoimmune condition that was triggered by all of this stress. So if you are in an autoimmune situation, a health struggle, or some other type of life struggle where you are feeling absolutely overwhelmed, overburdened, and you're not quite sure how to help yourself, this is a great episode for you to listen to, because it was basically dive in or don't survive for Brigette in this situation. And so she dove headfirst into how can I help myself? How can I help myself heal? How can I protect myself and create a sense of safety for my mind, body, and soul and family in the midst of these struggles? And so she walks us through the whole process that she took on this complete learning journey for her in how to heal on all these different layers. I know that there are going to be many things that you can take away from this conversation with Brigette to help you in your own journey. And with that, I will let you dive in to this really great conversation with Brigette. Brigette, welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm really excited to have you here all the way from Australia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we finally made this happen.
You have quite a story to share. And while it's not one of autoimmune struggles, there is a lot of crossover, as we were just talking about right before we hit record, with how you've had to navigate a very difficult and challenging situation. And so I thought that was a perfect excuse to have you on so we can go over your struggles, what has helped you, and how we can transition that into how it can help anybody with any kind of struggle, especially autoimmune. So if you want to kind of dive into your story over the last several years, believe it or not, we're not talking about just the COVID situation that affected the whole world. But you had some other stuff going on in the middle of all of that, which just compounded everything. So if you could just dive in wherever you think is necessary.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And yeah, it has been a tough 5 years, I think, for a lot of people just navigating COVID. It was such a shock to the world on a global scale. And it was a real challenge for people to navigate this new way of life and these new ways that we had to operate our lives, our careers, our motherhood journeys. And unfortunately for me, I had my daughter on the 8th of April, right in at the beginning of it. So we didn't really know what to expect. But I had a really large lawsuit placed on our family business 2 days just before she was born. So it was, like you said, a compound effect. So unfortunately, that timing for me was really challenging because I didn't have that support system as well. So normally when you become a mum, you picture people coming to visit you at the hospital and you have your casseroles that people bring over and you have your visitors and you have your play dates and your mother's groups. So unfortunately, I didn't get that experience. And so living with that and processing that I didn't get to have that experience was really challenging. And throughout the 5 years of the legal battles, which are still continuing to this day, it's been a real eye-opening experience in regards to my mindset and how I have expectations and I can't let them go, and how I've attached to my identity to certain things and how I've carried myself and lived with these wounds that I didn't realize I had through just ego ways, and how I let my ego control the situation. And when you have a lawsuit against your business, you take offense to that. You think, oh, we're not these people. How has this come about? How has this happened? And you go into a victim state, I guess. This lawsuit's with the Australian government. So it's really heavy and it just feels really unjust. My partner's never been interviewed by them and it's been a 5-year battle. So the way it's been conducted was really odd to us, and we thought it would blow over, but it just didn't. It just kept getting worse and worse. It's like there was some kind of underlying motive, which we still really don't know what it is. But in processing that, because I couldn't let go of these old ways that I was thinking and operating, it actually really affected my health. I was trying to put on a brave face, that perfectionism, everything's fine, or we're great, it's going to be okay. And putting on that front and really not being able to communicate and ask for help and things like that, I really had to unwire, and I really had to look at the deeper issues and the reasonings why I did operate that way. I did a lot of shadow work. So really looking into my thought process, my auditing every thought I had, because I was in a really negative state. We lost our home, we lost our business, basically. We lost everything. We moved about 10 times because we had to keep moving. We tried to avoid COVID a little bit so we could keep operating the business, so we could be able to fund our legal battles. So it was a survival mode that I had to operate in, as at the same time as being a nurturing leader for my daughter. And it was a juggling act that ended up just collapsing my whole body and my whole nervous system. And it did lead to an autoimmune issue where I had extreme hives through my whole body. I couldn't eat a lot of foods. I couldn't lay in sheets that had been washed in certain detergents. I had to cut all toxic products from my house. And I wasn't educated on that kind of thing before. And I ended up going to an Ayurvedic doctor who tested my blood and could see that I had an excess of heavy metals in my body. So he helped me remove those heavy metals. And now I do detox baths. Everything's clean in my house, basically. And my daughter does the same thing, which has been an amazing educational experience for me, which is why now I love talking all things health, wellness, mindset, and trying to pass on my knowledge to others to help if they're in a similar situation.
That is a lot that you've had to go through and learn in a pretty short amount of time. I've been on my health journey for 20 years, and it's taken me it took a solid 15 years to where I was really starting to make a big noticeable difference and change in my health. So that's amazing that you were able to make so much headway in such a short time in the midst of all of these trials. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of energy to be going through those trials in the first place, and then so much more energy on top of that to advocate for yourself. A lot of us don't stand up for ourselves and don't advocate for ourselves, at least at the beginning of that, because like you said, we go into that victim mode and it's like, why is this happening to me? Everything is happening to me. Why is my body reacting like this? And we go into that kind of defensive mode. So maybe we can start by talking. You mentioned one of the first things that you mentioned was the shadow work and doing a thought audit into your thoughts and realizing how negative minded you actually were. I found that to be true for myself as well. And that was when I started shifting, was when I started paying attention to those things. So can you talk that process through for our listeners?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for asking, because I actually just put up a free workbook on my Instagram this week of a 7-day thought audit workbook that anyone can download for free. And it basically just follows processes to go from being someone who reacts to your thoughts as if they're actually true, where a lot of them aren't, and just be going from someone who reacts to someone who observes. And that was my goal. I listened to a lot of Deepak Chopra when I was going through this journey, and he talks a lot about your thoughts and how you can detach and just be aware of them, but not attached to them. And there's always a gap in between your thought and your emotion. And if you can just pause in between that and have the thought, but don't attach to the thought to create the emotion. And that really stuck with me, because I always just attached to that thought thinking it was true. And I didn't realize that there was a difference between your inner voice and your ego voice. And that your ego voice is something, I guess, that was created in an instance where you were feeling unsafe. So it protected you somewhere along the line in your history or in your past. But it's now you've outgrown that. You evolve. And now it's still protecting you and keeping you in that space, but you don't actually want to be there. You're really uncomfortable there because you know you can grow and evolve. And so when I could feel that my body wanted to be somewhere else, but my mind was keeping me trapped, I was like, okay, I need to now dissect how this is happening. And so I got really granular on every thought, and I would just write it down. It was, I think, 2. So she was starting to move and walk everywhere, but I was still able to carry a notepad with me. And I would just, if I reacted or if I said something and oh, I hate this or something, I was getting really desperate at that time. I just needed everything to get lighter. And so I would just say it out loud, hoping someone would hear, someone would help, but I realized no one was going to help me. I had to do it myself. And so I would just write those feelings down that I was saying or thinking. And then I would ask myself, like, is this true? Do I hate this? Well, not really. I'm just being dramatic, and just that victimhood is kicking in. So I was really able to just dilute it and think, oh, like it's okay. I don't mean that. It's just a habit, or that's just my thought process. I need to stop that. So whenever I would go from saying it, I would catch myself, because I would have heard it myself say it so many times. So then I would start catching myself and not say it. And then when I got better at that, I would actually then replace it. So I'd go from reacting to observing to replacing. So instead of saying, oh, I hate that, I'm like, I actually really enjoy that. And I would try and put a positive note on it. And so I found that when I did that, I actually started enjoying that task that I was doing and not looking at it as if it's a burden. It was just how I went through the process.
And the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah. You catch yourself a lot easier now. You're like, oh, okay, I went to say that, but I don't actually mean it. It's just something that I heard someone else say, or I've got that conditioning from my childhood, or someone at school used to do that, and now I do it, and I've just carried that through my whole life, not realizing it's actually not me, it's someone else.
Yes. Well, an example for me is I used to get extremely bloated. And it might happen when I eat something one time, I would get really, really bloated. The next time I might eat it just fine. And so it was like this thing that I just couldn't pin down. And I would just get so upset at my body. I would be like, my body hates me or my gut hates me. Like, what's wrong with me? And that felt true. It felt like my body hated me. I believed all those thoughts. And now, after all the work I've done, I can look back and say, actually, my body was just looking out for me. My body was trying to send me a message that something's not right here. It had to make it really obvious so that I would pay attention. So I can see it in a whole different light now. But that took work. That took a lot of work to get from those first thoughts to the acknowledgement of the thoughts and that those thoughts aren't necessarily facts. And then to give it that pause, like you're talking about, acknowledge it, and then how can I shift it? And from what I've learned, also, we have this, it's 17 seconds, I think is the magic number of us being able to stop that energy from flowing or to continue. So recognizing that negative thought and being able to acknowledge it and flip it or release it, let it go within 17 seconds. And then you don't need to worry about that energy following through. Yeah. So it's quite a powerful part of healing. And I think it's one of, if not the most important parts, to be honest.
I agree. When I had the autoimmune issue and I did cut all those foods out that I was told to by a naturopath, I'd cut them out, but I was still reacting. And that's when I really understood the power of my thoughts, because I would wake up, I'd hear Emma, my daughter's feet, hit the ground, and my body would just tense because I didn't have any energy to give her. And I knew I had to look after her all day. And I wanted to give her all my love, but I literally was running on empty. And my neck would flare up. I would just be tearing skin off my neck. I would be so itchy. And I was thinking, I haven't even eaten anything today. So why am I having this reaction? And then I realized it was me. It was my thoughts that were actually triggering the stress response. It wasn't food. It was on top of that. And I think that's why I was so consistent and relentless in this journey, because it was debilitating, the hives, and it was based on my thoughts all the time. And I just thought, I need to clear this, because I just couldn't handle the reactions. Were just awful, absolutely awful.
I had such a similar experience. I was getting this really awful rash, and at the time I was working with an integrative rheumatologist who's an amazing doctor, and we had determined that I had not celiac, but pretty severe gluten sensitivity, as well as a sensitivity to eggs, chicken eggs. Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference. And the reach of this podcast, it takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode. So I cut those things out, and the rash did go away, but then it started coming back and flaring up even worse. And I cut out a few more things. It was still happening. And finally, we put two and two together that it was triggered by stress. And that was activating whatever that sensitivity was still in my body, that was activating it. So yeah, stress will do amazing things to our body.
Yeah. And I didn't understand about cortisol and all of those different elements of the body. And it plays such a big part when you're aware of it. And I think normally you just think I'm stressed, and people would go to the doctor and then they would issue them an antidepressant or something along those lines, which I think is a quick fix and an easy fix, but you're then on that kind of thing forever, which I just didn't want to have to rely on. I didn't want to do that. And I started doing a lot of fascia maneuvers, relieving stress out of the body. I follow a page on Instagram called The Human Garage, and they do a lot of maneuvers and educate a lot on the fascia, which is like the layer of in between the skin and the muscle. And they talk about it as if it's a hydraulic system, like it's actually got a lot of pressure in it. And if you do these particular maneuvers, it actually it blocks, you know how you block a hose and then all of a sudden you get the rush of water? Similar to that, but it's like it's flushing the stress out of the body. And that's what's causing disease within the body as well, that layer of stress that gets stored in that fascia. And they do a practice called the stress reset. And I started doing that every day religiously. And I felt so much lighter every time I would do it. And that was really helpful for me as well, just because then I was finding that I was getting the mind under control, but it was my body as well that was still holding a lot of this anger and heat, inflammation and frustration. The next thing I did was a forgiveness practice and forgiving people. I couldn't even really picture who I was forgiving because a lot of people work for the government. So I just pictured their building and I would just forgive and send white light and love and forgiveness to this building. And it did really help relieve a lot of that anger that I was carrying and the pain and the frustration and the resentment. And I feel like once I started clearing a lot of those emotions, I felt free and trusting that this was all part of a journey that I can't control. And I trust that whoever is responsible that might not be doing the right thing, their karma will come to them in due time. And that's not up to me to start plotting. You start thinking all these things. Or when you start getting really angry, you start thinking about the justice and the feeling of them getting what they deserve. But that just, again, brings up more energy and hatred and anger that you're carrying. And it's not affecting them because they're just still getting on with their day. So when I learned to just know and trust the universe will bring whatever karma is coming to whoever, that, took a lot of that anger again out of my body. And I think that's the most important thing with autoimmune. It's inflammation, it's anger. You've got that heat in your body that you need to let go of and allow your body to just regulate at its normal rhythm.
Yes. Inflammation, stress triggers inflammation, anger triggers inflammation. And you were talking about the fascia and how you have to move that energy through. That energy is sitting there and it's become stagnant. It blocks flow energetically and physically. And so if we can start moving things through, whether with this fascia work, like you were talking about, for somebody, it might be yoga. For somebody else, it might be somatic movements, breath work, right? But we have to find a way of moving and releasing the stuff. Otherwise, it just sits and festers.
Yeah. And you think, I'm so tired, I need a rest. But if you're just laying, which it is good to rest, but your body is just stuck. It needs that movement. It needs the flow, like you're saying, to flush everything out of your body. Otherwise, you're going to get stiff. And when you start getting stiff, you lose muscle mass, you lose energy, like you start to deplete in a way as well.
Now, when you were working through all of these things, you found some practitioners. Did you have community around you to draw on, or have you been able to create community or find some? Because I think that community is such a big part of healing, especially when it comes to these deep-rooted things.
I agree. I did find a lot of healers along the way. I found that I was attracting different modalities, which I'd never heard of before. And I was open to trying anything and everything at that point. I started with a kinesiologist who was quite spiritual as well. And that opened my eyes up to a lot of that trusting element, the forgiveness, those kinds of things that I had never heard of before. And I didn't think that they could be part of a healing journey. I did talk to a therapist, but he didn't really, it put me off a lot because he didn't know how to help me, basically. I feel like he felt really out of his depth and he didn't know how to provide me support because the situation was so out of my control. He was like, well, do you know how long this is going to take? And trying to give me that kind of solution, but no, it's still going on. And I spoke to him 4 years ago. So, and I never heard back from him. Like, he didn't follow up, he didn't do anything. And I was at a very dire situation and I was very unwell, very sad, very hurt. And it really just moved me towards the non-conventional route, which I'm so grateful for, because as soon as I saw the kinesiologist, she just made me feel seen and heard, and she could feel through body testing, she could feel my pain. And just having someone acknowledge my pain made me feel so safe and comforted, more than a therapist could, because they couldn't provide that level of comfort until they had a specific date to be able to say, oh, we'll just wait 6 months, that kind of mentality. So the kinesiologist was amazing. And also being able to see if your hormones are out, if it's the cortisol, if what hormone and what stress trigger that your body is reacting to help you really pinpoint where to focus. That was amazing. I did a lot of spinal flow, which is activating the spinal column and allowing your body to actually move with energy and clear blockages that sit in your spine. And so how she explained it was, when you've got back pain, your vertebrae are freezing around a blockage, which is in the column. And so you go to a chiropractor to adjust the vertebrae, but really there's a blockage in the column. And how she explained it was, when you have thoughts and you don't want to address them and you think, I'm just going to bury that, it goes to the back of your mind and goes down to your spinal column and will sit somewhere and fester, I guess, accumulate. And then that blocks nerves that actually go to the organs, because that's where the nerves live, in that spinal column. So that made a lot of sense, because I did have a lot of middle back pain always. I thought it was just stress, which I'm sure it was, but it was also blockages that were sitting there. And the spinal flow technique that helped me to really move those blockages out and clear the back pain, which was incredible. And then I saw the Ayurvedic doctor as well, who helped me with the actual blood testing. And he used a special, like an energetic machine that tests your organ function through your fingers and your toes. And it enables you to see if they're out of balance. And then he will link a certain chemical or mineral to see what that imbalance is related to. So mine was heavy metals. And that's how I knew I had a heavy metal in excess, which I had no idea about at the time either. So he made me write down everything I was eating, everything in my house. And he said, well, all of these things are toxic and have chemicals in them. And this has pesticides and you need to start washing that or getting organic this. And it was a lot, but amazing and life-changing.
Yes.
So,
And you can change a lot at once. If that's too overwhelming, I always tell people, just start with one thing. With one thing, then you can add another, then you can add another. We don't have to be perfect at this, right? It's all a process.
yeah, because it does overwhelm you when you have an issue where you're responding to all of these chemicals and things, you start really overthinking everything you're eating and doing and touching and buying and checking the labels of everything. And it can be overwhelming, especially if you're traveling as well, because you can't always trust what's in foods. But since I have cleaned as much as I can, and I've just cleaned my body as well in terms of the heavy metals, I can eat anything now without reacting. I haven't had hives in maybe 8 months. So I can be exposed to it now because I have really reduced that tolerance or increased that tolerance window of the chemical. If I know I've gone out and potentially eaten or I've had some alcohol or something, I'll always have a detox bath, or I will have activated charcoal to try and take any toxins out. I think just doing those little things are helping to not create the buildup that I had from years of being unaware of what I was consuming.
And when you say detox bath, what do you mean? What are you
So
doing?
I put in magnesium salts, bentonite clay, and a sprinkle of bicarb soap, and that's my bath.
Awesome. And how often, when you were really going through the detox, How are you doing
I
that?
did it every day for maybe a month or so. And in conjunction with the stress reset, I was doing that every day as well. And I feel like my body just started to clear up and my skin was just looking so much better. And to the point where I was getting red light therapy to heal my skin because my hives were all over my face. And she was so shocked at the transformation. She thought it was the red light, but I think the red light helped a little bit, but it was the baths that were just releasing all the chemicals from my body. And I think in conjunction with the stress reset, that was reducing the stress levels of my skin too.
Mhm.
So I think when you get that really amazing combination, you can just see that transformation just happens so much faster. But it takes a while to see because everybody's different and everyone is different. So it takes, I think, just keep trialing different combinations of practices together and then you'll see and feel the difference.
And being open to trying new things. I think that was a key element for you too.
Yeah.
We're in this Western world of what we're told is safe and effective, to borrow that term. And a lot of this stuff is not understood. A lot of this stuff is looked down upon, poo-pooed as to like just being more fluff instead of something that can really make an actual difference. So I think it's just really important to be open to trying these different things because what do you have to lose? Maybe a little money. I have a little money to lose, but try what you can, try what you can justify and get referrals from people. Just be open-minded and start searching on Instagram like you found the human garage with all the fascia work. You found that on Instagram, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a lot of the different herbs I'll try, like it is through Instagram, and it's just I feel like once your algorithm is set, it just keeps bringing you things, and you just have to listen to your intuition and think, oh, are they just doing that as a reel for followers, or do you think it's worth it? And then I'll start researching and checking reviews, and I think it's definitely like you said, being open-minded is the key because you might think it might be expensive at the time, but if you don't address it and you just go down a traditional route, you'll either be on an antibiotic or medication forever. And that's going to actually affect more things in your body and it will be more expensive in the future than just really being relentless with it now, sacrificing. And I really just did not care about the outside world the last 5 years. I was just tunnel vision, focused on family, health, and wellness because I just thought I've lived before this. I've had fun. I've enjoyed myself. I'm now a mum. This is a different phase of life. And I'm happy to go without dinners and going out and holidays and things for now until I can feel like I'm back to myself. It's just so much more important.
now I love that, but how you still have this lawsuit on your shoulders. Still have a young daughter who I don't know if you're homeschooling or if she's going to school at this point, but there's always going to be these outside influences that are coming in for better or worse. And so, how are you navigating keeping your focus on health and family with all this stuff still going on? You've obviously done a ton of work around this, but do you have any other key tools to like really help you stay focused on this?
Yeah, that's an amazing question because it does really take a lot of mental strength to keep focused and not let those things come in. So, for example, with James, every day he could come home with a new piece of awful news that's before would have floored me because some of the things I've witnessed from these people that are meant to protect the public are shocking, like shocking, and would never have expected it. Things in movies. So at the start, it was a shock, but now I guess I'm used to that shock factor. But also, I always just come back to trust. I look to the sky and I say, I trust that we're safe because I didn't feel safe for a long time. But when I think about it, even though we moved a lot, I always had a roof over my head. I was always able to eat. I was always able to get by. And I released that attachment to things and think that they can come and go. We had nice things. We lost nice things. we can buy them again in the future if we just keep focused on this journey. And I think when you have faith in that everything's happening to you for a reason and for you, I guess, that's what's got me through. And that's what stops me from getting so rocked every single time these things happen. I just don't attach to them the way I used to and start thinking, how are we going to fix it? Like being a solution. I like to try and fix everything, but you can't. And you have to just sometimes surrender to what's happening to you and try and look at it from a bird's eye view and think, I know I don't understand this right now. I don't know why this is happening, but I trust that there is a reason for it. Whether it's a small test, again, the universe is coming in and going, I'm going to give you another little taste and see if you've learned how to surrender and trust this time. And so I try, and as much as your body reacts sometimes, if you can just mentally prepare yourself and think, it's okay, I've been through this before, I got through it, we're going to be fine. And I feel like it doesn't hit you as hard.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my Health Bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode. Yeah, the surrender, I think, is huge. And gosh, that's so hard to do, right? It takes training. That takes training.
Exactly right. Yeah, it does. And I've had a 5-year degree in it. Like I have just had to literally just trust. And as easy as it sounds, it's really hard because you feel like especially if you go into survival mode, you feel like you have to control everything, but that's a fear-based quality. And so when I start to control things, I think to myself, what am I scared of? Like I always sit with myself and think, what's scaring me right now? Is it that I'm worried about emerald, or is it I'm worried about our home, or we're going to have to move? And I always just get to the bottom of it. And I just realize that's a future issue. Right now, what I can do is I can work on how I can create, like you were mentioning before, a community, or how can I help people? Because I feel that this happened to us so I can help others. And when I look at it from how can I be of service off the back of this experience, I feel like that's the silver lining. And the more that you're of service, the easier things get for you. But when you're thinking, oh, how can I make money, or how can I do it? They're fear-based qualities. And so you're going to feel more resistance going down those paths, where if you can just think, how can I be of service? It feels easier and things just start falling into place.
I totally agree with that. Being of service, I'm going to put this in terms of politics right now because things are, I'm sure, crazy in the US right now. New president, on both sides are freaking out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very fear-based stuff going on both sides, tons of judgment. Like I've never seen anything quite like it. And I think I'm witnessing so many people going into that survivor mode and they don't know what to do because they're just shouting about things on Facebook or they're angry at the television. And to me, I want to say take that energy and put it out towards like how can you actually help your community? How can you be of service? What can you do to move some of that energy in a positive way rather than just harping on what's going on in the world around you because you feel like you have no control? What can you control? Right. And take it to the community and try and do something positive to serve rather than holding all that anger in or, and letting it kind of erupt without it being able to make any kind of a difference, really, except for ruining your day.
Exactly. Yeah, I think what America's going through is similar to what, like, obviously on completely different scales, but what I went through this whole time because you're holding on to something that you can't control. You're trying to control something that's completely out of your control. Like, you need to accept that's the situation. And when you can, you think, oh, I like this isn't my problem. I just need to do what I'm meant to do on this planet and do what I'm here to do and not try and influence others or navigate it. Because if the TV's just all turned off tomorrow, no one would know any different and you could just get on with it. But I think it's the more you dive and go down those rabbit holes, the harder it gets for you. I did that during the whole COVID thing. I was so engrossed. I was so curious. I was navigating everything. And James just was getting so frustrated with me because I was just could not stop talking about it, could not stop like ever. I'd wake up and I just would go down more rabbit holes but it was hurting me. It wasn't helping anything. I was educating myself on certain things, but it was really affecting me because my whole perception of the world was changing every single day. But now I don't go into any of those rabbit holes and I don't look into it. So it doesn't affect me. And if I need to make a decision, I listen to myself on that decision or I do the research where I feel like I want to. But yeah, I feel like the world's just really divided at the moment and everyone's trying to influence others on their decisions and their thoughts. But if everyone just stopped talking about it, I feel like it would just dissolve and then everything could just move on the way it was before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting times, but I think you said tuning into your own thoughts on it and your own intuition, basically. And when we are so distracted by all of the chaos, it's a lot harder to listen to your inner knowledge, your inner strength, your inner trust, your trust between you and the higher power. And those conversations, those get dulled too. And so I think taking the space to just turn off the TV here and there, turn off the social media and get quiet, even if it's only for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. That 10 or 15 minutes can give you time to breathe and give you time to listen to your actual own thoughts about something versus everybody else that's chiming in.
Yeah. And I think the fear and the uncertainty is what's creating that need for more knowledge. That I need to know more. I need to understand this. But you're never going to because all you're told is what the media tell you or what's Instagram's telling you. And a lot of Instagram are bots as well now. So you just don't know where the narrative's stemming from, where it's coming from. And I just think it's good to have knowledge, but if it's affecting you and hurting your everyday life, it's not worth knowing. Also, it's not really worth your energy and your time because it doesn't really matter. You can't influence it. You can't change it. You can't do anything about it right now. You just can get on with your day. And I think every day that you spend fear-based and unhappy is one day less that you can actually align with yourself. And you just continue going on this lower frequency. Whereas if you just can raise your frequency and just not attach to it, you'll just feel a lot lighter. And if you do hear news, it's not as shocking because you're not waiting for this fear-based news to always come through.
I think that you have probably been privy to a lot of the fear-based or the fake news, for lack of a better term, probably around your own lawsuit and around
Yeah.
your family. Is that
Yeah.
the case? Yeah. So you have
Yeah.
firsthand knowledge of
Yeah, when this all started, we were mentioned in the media frequently. I think one journalist wrote 107 articles, or oh no, oh he wrote, yeah, I think no, not 107, but it was definitely a lot of articles about our family business, and he'd never spoken to either of us, and it was just like James and I would read these articles and just think, "This are they writing about us? This is not who we are," and some of our cases were undefended as well because we couldn't afford to pay for them at the time because our funding was shut off in the early stages. So they were writing articles based on judgments that were one-sided. So of course they weren't going to be fair. And so for the journalists to be able to write about that without having both sides, it was just waking me up to so much about the world. And I thought, if they're going to lie about us here, then I started then questioning everything I was reading because I thought, well, has the other person been interviewed here? How can you confidently say that if they haven't had their voice heard? And my partner and I have just also launched a new social media platform called media.com. And it's in its beta stage and will be hopefully live soon. We do have subscribers and we do have a lot of members that are joining up daily. And we're still just making sure everything runs smoothly. But it's a platform that we realized after this ordeal that needed to exist because people aren't able to have their voice heard in these kinds of situations, just like we weren't. Unless you've got deep pockets, you can't defend yourself. And it actually allows you to share your story, allows you to respond to adverse media, allows you to support your claims, your comments with evidence as well. You can put documentation in there. You can put a feed up there so people can know you and get to understand you. And we're finding that unless you have that social media status and those followers, which we didn't care for like when we built our business, you don't have a voice really. And no one really wants to really care about what you have to say. So we're really excited to launch that now, which is allowing people to feel a bit safer in the environment because it's more of a verified platform where everyone has to be verified. So there's no bots, no fake accounts. Everyone has to have their name attached, which we're hoping will create more accountability within the media space.
I love that.
So, yeah. So that's exciting.
Love that. I think that's really important right now, especially. I think we need to have access to free speech and we need to be able to defend ourselves.
Yes.
So I think that's awesome that you're doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're really excited. We've had a lot of really great feedback and I just feel like it's hopefully going to clean up the industry a little bit. Like we love X and Twitter, but I feel like there's so many fake accounts on there as well. And we tried to go on there, but we had fake accounts set up that were responding to all of our things and changing the narrative again. So I don't know, like there's freedom of speech on there, but this is just going to maybe elevate it to a bit more of a mature space where everyone has to be accountable for what they're saying.
Yeah. Awesome. We've talked about a lot. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you want to touch on or anything that you want to leave our listeners with specifically?
I feel like we did cover a lot and that was such an amazing chat. So thank you so much. Mainly what I'm doing and what I'm hoping to do is to educate people on forgiveness and all of the benefits of that practice. So that's probably where I'm going to keep going with my content and with my strategy, potentially creating some kind of course or just doing a workshop, creating a workspace for people to be able to just understand it a bit better and how it can really help your grieving process and reduce issues around autoimmune and things that can cause that disease in the future. So that's something that I'm really passionate about, and also just trying to build a community. So for anyone who is potentially going through anything look, my situation was a bit of an outlier, but anyone going through anything that they need support on, I'm just wanting to be able to lend that space for people. So anyone who's needing support, just reach out, and I'm more than happy to help and send any resources that I have or tools that I've used as well.
I love that. I think the forgiveness thing is such an important key because I think a lot of times we touched on this, but like you had a very direct, acute situation that brought up the need to deal with forgiveness. But sometimes I think it goes back to childhood instances, things that we're holding on to from our past that we don't even realize that are causing these patterns in our current situation, right? And so if we can unravel some of that, take it down to those roots of what we need to forgive, whether it's from others or forgive ourselves for, can be huge and very powerful in our healing journeys. So yeah.
I'm so glad that you've said that, because it is so true. There is so much we're not aware of that we're holding on to, even from past experiences that we've done that we haven't forgiven ourselves for, that we don't realize. So it's really powerful.
And where can everyone find you?
So I'm Brigette Panetta on Instagram. I've got a media.com profile, Brigette Panetta as well. I'll send you the links so you can put them in the show notes. And on YouTube, I'll be sharing a lot more tools and things like that. So that's just Brigette Panetta on YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brigette. This was such a great conversation. I know we've left a lot of tools with our listeners. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
So I love that while Brigette and I have completely different origin stories, we had so many similarities in what we've been through with our physical healing journey and our mindset being one of the first key factors that really started making a difference. For me, it was, again, figuring out that I even had limiting beliefs in the first place. All of these beliefs that I had, I thought were factual. Turns out they aren't. Turns out they are completely flexible and changeable. I just have to be able to acknowledge thoughts in the first place and recognize that I can choose to change them if I want to. That was the biggest part of my healing journey that started making a huge difference. Granted, there are many things that have come since then, but it took me years and years to get to that point. And once I got to that point, the changes in healing were coming much faster. And again, the same with Brigette. She focused on doing that shadow work, looking at the negativity in her thoughts, looking at the anger that she was feeling at this situation, and learning that she also could have some control over the way she reacted, learning how to respond to things, learning how to observe her thoughts before creating a response, right? And that was the start to her healing journey. So I hope that you take away the simple understanding that your thoughts are powerful, but they aren't necessarily factual. I hope you take away the fact that you are the observer of your thoughts. And by observing your thoughts, you can shift them and you can make a huge change in the trajectory of your life just by doing that. Please reach out to Brigette. She is such a fantastic resource to have on your side. Download her 7-day forgiveness practice that she has on her Instagram. The link, of course, will be down below. I also begin my coaching with my clients and also addressing this in a very similar way, because again, it is the most important part of healing is first addressing mindset, finding where you are limited in your beliefs and learning how to slowly recognize that so you can shift it. So if you are ready to take on your healing journey, reach out to me. I would love to have a short chat with you and see where you are struggling the most and see which things we can shift to make a huge difference in your healing journey. Just reach out to me. Again, that link is down below. I would love to chat. And I really look forward to having you again soon on the next episode of the Health Bridge podcast.